Marshall, thank you so much for joining me on New Mexico in Focus this week.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
So it's Pride Month, and I want to get to that in just a moment, but I would like to start just a bit broader. We began a conversation with Kevin Bowen from the Santa Fe Human Rights Alliance last year with a question that I would like to start with you right now, with the caveat, of course, that we are in a very high stakes election year here in 2024. But where do things stand, both nationally and at the state level, in terms of LGBTQ plus rights?
Yeah, I mean, I think, to start at the national level, what we've been saying at EQ&M, what our partners across the country have been saying, is that this is the most politically dangerous time, arguably since the peak of the HIV/AIDS epidemic, right? And the parallel that I've drawn for folks there is that was a time when especially gay and bisexual men vilified publicly. People didn't want us to be out and around. People were scared, uninformed about the virus, were scared, right? And so it was the first time since the beginning of the modern LGBTQ rights movement where queer people were really forcibly pressured back into the closet, back into hiding. And that's exactly what we're seeing right now across the country, right? Bans on gender-affirming care for minors, and recently even some attempts to ban gender-affirming care for transgender adults, right? The Don't Say Gay laws, which is really an understatement for what those bills have done across the South, right? These, all of these sorts of things, banning drag shows in public, which is really a ban on transgender people existing in public spaces, right? And so we're in a space now at the national level where LGBTQ folks, queer and trans people and their families are feeling like they have to hide from the public. Not only is there a policy danger there, but whenever those policy conversations come up in community, it leads local people who already have harbored this fear or this frustration or this hatred or this anger to then react physically or violently, right?
The culture follows the policy often.
Yeah, absolutely. And occasionally the policy follows the culture, but typically it's the other way around, right? And so the result of that is that in states across the country and in communities, even in some of the safe harbor states like New Mexico folks are really afraid to be out and proud, right? Which is one of the reasons I think Pride is so important, and I know we're gonna talk about that. New Mexico is very unique. We have continued now, we are rolling on to our second year of having the most policy legal protections in the country for LGBTQ people. We accomplished a lot of really great work in the 2023 legislative session. New Mexico actually has a history of being very progressive on LGBTQ issues. A lot of folks, I think, don't know that, but we were one of a handful of states that legislatively repealed sodomy laws in the 70s, right? We never criminalized HIV, those sorts of things. We built on that in 2023. And so in policy, on the books, New Mexico is one of the safest places in the country to be a queer or trans person.
There's an infrastructure question that we could spend a whole half an hour talking about in terms of like what the mandate that those policies created was. But I want to get to this year's legislative session if I can. Shortly after the session, your organization released a statement that said in part that the end results of the session were a, quote, mixed bag for LGBTQ plus New Mexicans. So which items in the bag were good and which ones gave you some concern?
I think, to start with, we worked in coalition with a number of organizations, the Coalition of Sexual Assault Providers, Planned Parenthood, et cetera, to pass an affirmative consent law in New Mexico. It was 5 years of attempts to pass this bill. And this bill basically, what passed this last session, said, on college campuses, when an accusation of sexual misconduct comes up, affirmative consent is the standard by which you adjudicate that claim, and affirmative consent is the level to which you educate young people. That was a top priority for LGBTQ folks. We, gay and lesbian people experience sexual violence at roughly 40% of our population. Trans folks, 2 out of 3 transgender individuals will experience some form of sexual violence. And our thought process behind that is you cannot expect people to play by the rules if you haven't taught them what the rules are. So that was really big, really important, really crucial. I've told my own story of being a young queer person who didn't understand consent, didn't know what I was and wasn't expected or allowed to say or do as a young person. So a whole new generation of young LGBTQ people will at least have an even playing field and understand how they can negotiate consent around their sexuality. So it was really great. But the vast majority of the session we spent actually trying to defend ourselves against what I would say are highly political, not evidence-based criminal laws, right? New crimes. And a lot of folks have asked me, why is Equality New Mexico talking about the so-called criminal justice system, mass incarceration? And the reality is that our communities live in this, we live in this sense of polarity, right? When we are over-policed in communities, right? And so when there's a charge of domestic violence, LGBTQ people are significantly more likely to be arrested than our heterosexual counterparts. And at the same time, when in neighborhoods where there are a large number of queer folks, the suspicion of violent crime, the possibility of a robbery, et cetera, across the country experience much slower response rates. So we live in this sort of, in this weird polarity around criminal justice. But then the result is that because we have experienced systemic discrimination since our childhoods, we don't have access to good lawyers. We don't have support systems to help us through. And so we end up being over-prosecuted, over-convicted, and over-incarcerated, right? And so we said it was a mixed bag because we worked really hard to pass that affirmative consent law. And because we didn't roll back. I mean, again, for the 6th year in a row, more anti-LGBTQ legislation was introduced across the country than ever before. We've broken a record for 6 years in a row. In New Mexico, we had one bill introduced. It was not ruled germane. It never got a hearing. We didn't have any of that backsliding. I don't think we should live in this current state, but the state we live in right now is such that not sliding backward is a huge victory when you look at the landscape across the country. My peers across the country in our group text messages with EDs all over the country, every day we're like, I think we're gonna lose this bill. We just lost another fight, right? And so we felt like it was a really good session in that LGBTQ people didn't lose anything, and we got that one really good bill. It was also not so great in that we spent an entire 30-day session just trying to provide information and nuance around the idea that like more cops, more jails, more people in jail does not impact the rate of crime.
I want to bring you back here and have a conversation about that. We talked before the cameras started that was my beat for a long time as a journalist. So let's stick a pin in that and get back to it some other time. I want to pivot to one of the House races that you all really focused on during this last primary election, and that would be District 18, where Mariana Anaya won with 48% of the vote. Why were you so heavily focused in that district and on that race?
Yeah, I mean, I think first of all, the first thing that I would say is Representative Gail Chasey, who's been a personal friend, has been a champion for the LGBTQ community for a very long time, for the entirety that she had been in the legislature. A lot of folks don't know or don't remember, but when we passed our original non-discrimination law to protect queer and trans people in 2003, she was the sponsor of that bill, right? And she was leading the charge in the House at a time when the Democratic caucus was not, they were not at pride parades at that point in time. And she was the one saying, we're not going to take these steps backwards on LGBTQ issues. So first and foremost, holding on to that district for us meant saying to the statewide community, this is not a space where one individual was the champion. This is a space where this seat can demonstrate that we have a tradition of being progressive, and we need to continue that work across the board, right? So that was the first thing that was a priority. The second thing, and I've been totally honest about this, Mariana has been a member of the Equality New Mexico team for many years, right? She was a volunteer and donor and supporter of the organization before I came back on staff as the executive director. Throughout her career, she's been an openly queer woman of color, been really proud, and she was our actual lobbyist for the last 2.5, almost 3 years. I don't understand time anymore, but for 2 to 3 years, that's exactly right. But for 2+ years, she was our lobbyist. And what that meant for us was that because we don't have the same kind of contract lobbyist relationship that a lot of folks think about, right? She came to staff meetings. She engaged with our community. She understood what the gaps were in policy around the state. And then she sat down and wrote the bills with me, with the experts that we know, with our community, developed the plans and strategies for passing those bills. And so when I talk about us becoming the safest state in the country in policy, we protected gender-affirming care alongside protecting abortion access and reproductive health care. That was in large part because Mariana fought really hard to make sure the legislature understood gender affirming care is equally as life-saving and critical as abortion care, right? Which was not the narrative around the country. States that are protecting abortion access are not actively protecting gender affirming care, right? Mariana and I sat together and wrote the updated Human Rights Act, right? And so she was a member of the team. And then the last thing that I'll say is that in a legislature of 112 people, we are always, very happy to have folks who are strong allies and good supporters. I tell people oftentimes my favorite legislators are the ones who say, we'll do whatever EQ&M thinks is important, just let us know. But it is really critical that somebody inside the caucus, somebody on the floor, somebody in committee is both thinking about the strategy for passing bills and the external public narrative, as well as just the nuance and technicality of understanding the process. And Mariana was the perfect champion for us in saying she's been a lobbyist, she knows the strategy, she works well with community organizations. She's a legislator that I can call and have a conversation with and say, this is the priority, and she'll say, let's work together to solve it. And so, it was the combination of all of those things that led us to prioritize that race.
The ultimate sort of natural fit, it sounds like.
Yeah, absolutely, it really is, and also it is, worth knowing that we had, a few years ago, we had 2 openly queer members of the House and 4 openly queer members of the Senate. Both of those numbers have dropped a little bit because of some retirements and some choices not to run, et cetera. And so we also just really thought it was critical that the House Democratic Caucus and House at large, when they think of LGBTQ people, they have a peer, one of them sitting on the floor with them to be that face for them.
Marshall, we've got some minutes left here. Let's get to Pride.
Yeah.
One thing I want to talk about, we have seen an increase certainly in sort of branding and maybe even commercialization around the events themselves. It seems like sort of everybody wants a piece of this now. I wonder what your thoughts are or concerns might be around the idea of some co-opting and maybe even whitewashing of some of these events.
Yeah. We use the term rainbow capitalism, right? The folks who slap a rainbow sticker on their window or they turn their logo from blue and yellow to a rainbow color for Pride Month because they remember queer people exist in June. And then we don't hear from them at any other part of the year, right? And EQ&M, we have something we say all through May and June, which is we happen to be queer all year, so you could also contact us in November, right? And that is real. And there's a real concern to the big brands, the big corporations that sponsor all of the Pride festivals, that rush out there to make sure everybody knows, the folks who put rainbow merchandise on their shelves, et cetera. And on the one hand, that's critical. I was a young queer person in a rural southern New Mexican community who spent a good chunk of my childhood thinking I was the only person like me, right? And so when I think now about a 12 or 13-year-old queer kid who hasn't told anybody, doesn't know what's going on in their brain and what's wrong with them, seeing that on television, hearing about it on the radio, at least indicates to them there are other people like me, right? Maybe I do belong. And so that's a really important step forward. At the same time, Pride should be a celebration and a recommitment to the activism, to the Stonewall riots, to the work we've done as a community to reach liberation. And it's hard to do that when capitalism is the basis of the oppression that we faced in so many ways, right? And so, I still go to Pride festivals, and I'm happy to dance in the corporation named whatever pavilion and, all of those things. It takes money to have a good party. And I welcome the money from those folks to plan a big party, right? Because we deserve a big party. We deserve an opportunity to be ourselves and feel safe and, and authentic out in public on Central or at Balloon Fiesta Park or whatever. And I think that queer and trans folks are really good at having a nuanced lens to say, thank you for the support you gave to Pride. Thank you for making sure you put your money into this space. Thanks for putting the rainbow t-shirts out or putting the sticker up or whatever. And we expect you to do better the rest of the year. And that means really helping us to dismantle the system that has created the need for so much discrimination baked into an education system, a criminal legal system, a healthcare system, right? And so again, it is like a repeated line at Equality New Mexico, but it's a mixed bag for us. We want the support, the publicity, the socialization, the acceptance, the representation. Those are critical for young queer and trans people to grow up in a world seeing themselves embraced and represented, right? And those definitely are parts of a larger system that makes it so hard for us to see ourselves in liberation.
And you said the word struggle too, right? There's a balance, very much a balance between making sure that that remains at the bottom of what you're doing versus the other side. I want to get away from the events for just a moment and spend just a second talking about Pride from a deeper, more sort of values-based perspective. And I would just like to ask, what does Pride mean to you through that lens?
You know, the first thing I always say when people ask that, again, I grew up in a rural southern Mexican community, and so I always go back to my first Pride festival in Albuquerque. I'd rather say not say what year, because I don't think people know how old I am. Yeah. Pride for me was the first opportunity that I got to dress the way I wanted to be as visibly queer as I had wanted to be in my tiny town, and not spend the day looking over my shoulder or identifying an exit or trying to find a place to hide. And so for me, first and foremost, Pride is a container for people to be their whole, true, authentic selves without fear. And I think Pride represents what our struggle is for. We deserve to have the experience of Pride. I don't want to parade in the heat all summer long, but we deserve to have the experience of Pride all year long in whatever community we live in, right? And I think that the values that boils down to are values of bodily autonomy and being able to make decisions about my own body, both healthcare-wise, but also just how I walk through the world, how I present myself, right? Acceptance, not tolerance. We've stopped being okay with tolerance a long time ago. Like, I tolerate mosquitoes in the summer, right? But I don't accept them. And so, right, and I, you know, in righteous anger, yell at them every day in my backyard. But I think the reality is, like, we deserve acceptance, we deserve the feeling of safety, and we deserve community. And to me, that's what Pride is, right? It's safety, it's community, it's a big family reunion. There are people I see at Pride festivals in Albuquerque every year. I'm looking forward to Santa Fe Pride, it's one of my favorites. And there are people that I only see at Santa Fe Pride. And when I see them, I have 45 minutes of amazing catch-up conversation, sitting in the grass on the plaza, just being reminded of how much love exists in our community, and that connection of, we may not talk all year long, but we know that we're a part of the same struggle, we're part of the same community, and we can connect with each other when we're in need. And I think that to me, that's what Pride is.
Marshall, thank you so much for the chat. I appreciate you coming down today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, and happy Pride.
Same to you.